in paradise. Today, what are we going to talk about? The same thing we talk about every single week. Every single week, I come here and I talk about growth. Sometimes we bring in growth hackers. Sometimes we bring in founders. Sometimes we bring in people who are somewhere in the middle. Maybe it's a service provider or somebody else. But always, in all cases, we focus on what is very relevant today that can help you build a really good, strong business for yourself and do really well in the future. Let's start today. I want to give you a really, really, really good concept, which I know nobody has really spoken about before. And it's going to be in the area of empathy resonance. I've never spoken about this before. It's literally brand new. Not only have I never spoken about this before, but I also have never heard anybody else spoken about this before too. So the core of building incredible product that can grow, other than having a really, really good amount of fuel to be able to grow that product, i.e., revenue from your customers, maybe a little bit of investment that would come through from a VC or from somebody else as well. But the thing that you need, other than that, is to make sure that your product is loved by your customers. Now, what are the components of your product being loved by your customers? Well, the first component is you got to have a great user experience. I kind of lump in user experience with lovable product in the same place, right? User experience for me is when you have this incredible flow from the beginning all of the way through. But you have to have a great product for that flow to work. It's kind of put in together in the same place. Now, at the same time, at the beginning, your user interface is going to be incredibly important, because unless you're an outlier like Craigslist, who somehow managed to convince everybody that they should use this terrible user interface, for the rest of us mere mortals, we have to plan to have a really nice look and feel with the consumer when we actually put our product to them, whatever it is. Because not only is that user experience important to get them to where they need to go and transformed by it as quickly as possible, but the user interface is really important to make sure that it feels like they're traveling on a beautiful superhighway with trees going down both sides of the roads and the most gorgeous scenic journey they've been on their life, but getting there in the shortest possible time, right? Terribly important. And now you'll also often hear me talking about emotional resonance as a really important part of brand. And when I bring Sheila in about 5 or 10 minutes, and she talks a little bit about Protelicious and how she's built out this incredible brand, I know she'll also speak about emotional resonance and how that has really worked for their company. But emotional resonance is like terribly important to me, because having a great product, having a great superhighway to get there, and having a great experience while you're searching, finding, and enjoying that product is one thing. But if your consumers do not feel, then you are doomed from the very beginning. They have to feel. That is your job. And not only do they have to feel something, but they have to feel something as well as being transformed. Having them transformed is by far the most important thing here. No kiss, Sheila. I just said we're going to wait for Sheila. We're going to give her 5 or 10 minutes, okay? So we're going to have, so it's very important to have emotional resonance, which is built in there as well. So we have the user experience, user interface, and user emotional resonance, okay? Now, on top of that, we also have an extra component, which I'm going to throw in there today. Now, the extra component to me is something I had never looked at before. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure this extra component for an early stage company, a mid stage company, and a late stage company, right? And this last component is user empathy. And user empathy is all about making sure that you're in a position that your customer feels you care. It is different from emotional resonance, different from user resonance, because user resonance is having them feel an emotion when they get involved in you. But that emotion is not necessarily that you care deeply as a brand. Now, at the beginning, when you're launching your company, if I had to break down these 4 areas, I would say your user experience, which incorporates your lovable product, is probably like 50, 60%. I think your user journey, your user interface is incredibly important as well. And then as you're then working out what your product looks like, what will happen is your emotional resonance will start to build more and more into an area of dominance. And that emotional resonance will make people love your product. Just think about how Ben and Jerry's grew versus Haagen-Dazs, and look at other brands which are pretty similar, how they grew versus that area as well. So all of those things grew really thin. But as your company moves from that beginning journey to a kind of a more serious A and beyond round, how the customers feel that you empathize about them is massively important. It's absolutely everything. And that to me is the downfall of great brands. It's not just that their products don't stay innovative, it's that they don't care. And the moment that consumers feel they don't care, they are doomed. And so I'm going to give you an example today. Before we dig into this wonderful company we have, which is Apple. I believe Apple have lost all emotional empathy, all user empathy for their consumers. Why do I say this? As a lover of Apple products, as somebody who's got an Apple phone beside me and an Apple computer right here in front of me, because when I had a breach about 2 weeks ago or a week ago, and they got into my iCloud account, and I was like, it's okay, it happens. But then I spoke to Apple and they didn't care. And not only do they not care, they tell people, hey, we're going to give you the keys of the house. You give us the keys of the house. We're going to like keep it safe up here. But if somebody breaks into your house, not only are we going to allow them to break into your house, but we're going to allow them to stay in your house. And we have no process whatsoever to be able to fix that. That to me is the beginning of a downfall for a company. But like everything else, I take incredible joy and wonder from this because it allows me to build in a massively important component for companies to be able to go stronger and stronger and stronger in the future. You have to demonstrate that you care about your customers. So we're going to have a great call today. I'm going to bring Sheila in. We're going to dig into it. And she's going to explain a little bit about this incredible company that Expert Dojo have invested into. And we're going to start going across these different 4 areas because I believe she's an excellent example of how she's dealing with all 4 of these areas incredibly well. And hopefully everybody's going to get a really, really great feel as to how you're going to be able to build for yourself using these great things. Hey, Sheila.
Hi, Brian. Nice to be here. Thank you so much.
You are very welcome. I had not forgotten about you, but we do a nice little introduction to everybody so everybody knows what you're going to be talking about. So lovely to see you here. It is my pleasure that we are investing in you and we love the brand that you're building. And I'm not sure if you could hear what I was speaking about at the beginning there, but it's all about like these 4 areas, the areas of building out this beautiful brand, which has the component of your user experience, your user interface, your user emotional resonance, and then your user trust, love, and as I said, empathy that's built in there in the end. And I think empathy is a word that's never used. But I had this incredible experience with Apple that I'm actually really grateful for because it allowed me to see how great brands destroy themselves from the inside through just a massive amount of outsourcing and everything else, but also how new great brands can break through and attack them in an area of weakness that you can get in. And it's not just Apple that do this. There's so many large companies, especially in the food space and even in the longevity space, who leave themselves open. So we're going to talk about all of this. The folks listening we have investors who are listening. We have startups who are listening. We have a bunch of folks listening live. We have a bunch of folks who are listening afterwards. And everybody wants to hear all about you. I believe you are going to be one of the most important longevity brands that is going to emerge over the next 5 to 10 years. There you go. I'm giving that prediction out there. But could you speak a little bit about Protelicious, explain a little bit about like what the genesis of the idea came from and really why you exist? And then we're going to dig into those 4 areas and we're going to start scoring you on each one.
Okay. All right, with pleasure. So Protelicious starts from too long, two worlds that I think are very important have been divorced. You've got health on one side and delicious food on the other, and they've been divorced. And Protelicious came about because I've always been obsessed with the pathways between food and health and really feeling that you can do things differently right from an early age, right? My grandmother was brought up in front of teaching hospitals at the age of 85 as to why she had blonde hair and it wasn't L'Oreal blonde, why she had no wrinkles, why she was able to work on a, her math much quicker than we were at 17 with a calculator. And she put it all down to nutrition. So I'm listening at this point, but I'm not applying. I did my undergrad and nutrition food science from McGill. I never worked in it. I always became obsessed because I got a great job after that, and I did a left turn. I got into marketing. I did a master's in that area. By this time, I'd moved to France and met my husband. We'd had 3 kids. I was a publisher, still very interested in the pathways between food and health on a personal way. We moved to Hong Kong. Hong Kong, if anybody knows the company, the country, it's very very fast, highly connected, and it's quite toxic from a point of view because you've got all the winds that come in from China right next door. So it's a beautiful, intoxicating environment. But there's also quite a bit of it's tricky to navigate. Anyway, 2 of our 3 children had subtle health issues, and when you've got kids that have got health issues, you put down everything and you focus on it. To cut a long story short, I really dug back into the science and made sure that I made sure that everything that we did really worked towards health and not away from that. I became an informal resource, then a formal resource, and I'm giving lectures at banks, and then I'm giving a TEDx talk, and I'm thinking on the pathways between food and health, and then I'm thinking, okay, I need to wrap this all up in a book and move on with my life. People are doing well. We still have there's sort of at this point there's still sort of lifestyle issues, small lifestyle issues. I'm going through a life change. My kids have a teenage, a few like uh, uh, you know pizza face, a little bit of issues, things that are we deal with on a regular basis that everybody deals with. So when I'm working on my manuscript, which really covers what went on in the food industry, which is very interesting right now since the end of World War I to right now. So you understand the change in the food industry. You understand, then you see also what your body needs to thrive as opposed to survive. Then when you see that, and you see what's in your plate, you can navigate without paying for uninformed consequences, because we all do. It's a credit card, though. It's not cash. It's a credit card, and the consequences of food are sort of go out in time. So I go to who's now my co-founder, a leading expert in nutrition, health, and inflammatory diseases, and I was asking to help him with my manuscript. I said, Jeff, what do you have that can really help what do you have that's going to bypass everybody's complaints, that's going to sustain, like that I can get into everybody's diet and everybody's, inflammation, midlife, midlife changes, the kids, that everybody's just life is going to be better. I need one magic bullet. And he said, Sheila, I said, actually, the only thing that sustains a body completely and totally is a very specific quality whey protein, but it has to be very clean and cold filter processed. So I said, Jeff, that's for bones and muscles. Like I studied that stuff. He said, no, that's where everybody gets it wrong. He said, when you get the quality and the process, the way it's processed correctly, then you have something. You have an amino acids which is ancient, which actually Hippocrates recommended 2,000 years ago for against gout, inflammation, whatnot. But you have a quality which optimizes all the different systems on the body because everything runs on that. And it actually happens to be delicious. So being tenacious, I ended up by finding literally a source that was in a cupboard in Hong Kong through different reasons. But when I discovered it, and we mixed it with really good flavoring like Valrhona cocoa, Valrhona has been a strong partner of us right from the beginning, freeze-dried strawberries. And I integrated that into the food plate. What was incredible was 2 things. One is I'm not having to recommend it, ask anybody. It was delicious. Everybody enjoyed it on their own terms, went to the kitchen, did their things, and the whole thing went on with their friends and families. They loved it. The second thing is because you love something on a daily basis, it then all the benefits unfold. So over time, inflammation, focus, hair, skin, and nails, digestion, energy, sleep, because all the systems are run on protein. This was before COVID. At this point, all the protein is in fitness, and I'm at an outlier. But I'm also starting to carve out new ground in there. By we got
You
it
are
in.
just so I do this. I'm going to ask you to do something, and then I'm just going to give a little
Yes,
bit of a um, a recap, just so we can dig in a little bit.
sure.
If you don't mind removing your headphones and just do it
Oh,
straight on the phone, because it's coming out. You're coming out very. It's coming out just a little bit
done.
blurry on the thing. Just change on your system now. So I'll if I can, I want to throw in a few things here that
Right,
Sheila's going through just to make sure that it comes across properly. And then I want to get as quickly as we possibly can to the point
okay,
where the product came out so that we have that. So, first of all, think about what I went through at the very beginning of the call. When you're looking at building a beautiful user experience, which has an incredible product in place, it has to be transformative impact, massively transformative impact, tethered with deep purpose. And so everything you're hearing from Sheila here is it's the deepest purpose that can be. Like she went as deep into finding what are the components of helping people live as healthily as possible while having something delicious that they love so that they can live their lives. Because there's no point in telling people to eat or drink terrible things that they hate so that they can be healthier, because we know that that doesn't work. So she was literally trying to break the greatest paradigm there is in food, which is find something super healthy and make sure that it's really delicious at the same time. The user interface that she's building is to put it into a product, which we're going to get to, which is something that is so desired by people, but people are so afraid to go after it. The empathy that she has is to make people feel that they can finally have food, drink, things that they can love, and it will be good for them. The hidden everything that nobody's ever be able to go to. And then the final piece that I mentioned, which is why I predict the imminent doom of Apple over the next 10 years, is that she really, 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 really cares. And that part of it means she didn't build some awful, terrible minimum viable product that took like 5 seconds to build. She researched and looked into it and dug into it. And so for investors out there, this is the type of founder that you want. For founders out there, be careful about running too fast to get a product out to market just because you've read some lean startup book. Okay. So Sheila, please keep going, and then take us to the piece where you worked out that like the area your way to attack was through the most delicious thing that we
deliciousness.
all love.
It's through. We're all creatures of habit. My husband is French, right? So we lived in France for 18 years, and that's the gourmet is a really part of the DNA here. But we are creatures of habit. Everybody on this call, we've probably had a coffee or had a breakfast or a lunch or a dinner or and there's going to be some form of enjoyment in there. And this is a habit that we've had for millennium, and we gather around food. So the food that we want to bring to the table needs to heal, because we all have a common major obstacle, and that is the industrialized food chain. The industrialized food chain has, well, I'm just talking in North America. There's 600,000 articles on the food chain. Out of that, 80% are spiked with high fructose corns or added sugar and added salt. Sugar, the problem, we all know this, it's addictive. It impacts the same place in your brain as hard drugs. So people go back to the trough, and it's not your fault. If you're addicted on sugar, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. But
It
there's
really
things.
isn't.
It's not. It's not. It's not
Do people
because
even know? Do people even know how many like glasses of sugar are in like even just a basic bran flakes or something else, like it is not just a maybe that you're going to die from the amount of sugar that's put into food these days. It's kind of a cast iron guarantee, isn't it?
It's true, and the problem is if you look at any ingredient label, the first three, if the first three end in OSE, put it back, it's a dessert. I don't care if it's a ketchup, I don't care if it's a yogurt, I don't care if it's a cereal, but put it, or bread, put it back, it's a dessert. And sugar hides underneath 56 different names. Most of them end in OSE. But the problem is the stuff is addictive. And so what we're doing, so Protelicious deals with in two ways. It's all science backed too. When you enjoy the our gourmet whey protein, which is in, like, we put it in it's in the big banks, it's in where we've got some big partnerships with the hotels and restaurants, so it's in more lifestyle. When you enjoy that on a daily basis, naturally the sugar cravings calm, you build up your immunity, longevity, you build up your foundational wellness, because that's what drives all your systems. But one thing I got obsessed with really early, and that's because I had a problem growing up, right? So I love ice cream. Ice cream didn't love me growing up. It's an $18 billion industry. Every North American eats 20 pounds a year. That's 2/3 of a bathtub, folks, every year. The problem is you have in ice cream, for one scoop, you have one half of what in regular ice cream, you have one scoop of what the World Health Organization recommends it added sugar. So it's a catastrophe. It's a catastrophe. So very early, I thought, because the protein was like it was so creamy and so good and so delicious, I thought we can turn this on its head. We can create an ice cream which is drop dead gorgeous and indulgent and delicious, and provides benefits, indulgence with benefits. We can do it. This was the hardest journey. I wanted it, because it's not an easy thing. We had to do this because we backed into this, because we really understand the deep science and the biochemistry and the food science behind the protein. So we were able to create this. But basically, what our ice cream, Paradise by Protelicious, does is it brings to the market a indulgent treat that delivers between 9 and 11 grams of high quality protein per serving. So that's about 2 eggs. So what did that do? That supports your structural health. That also stabilizes people's sugar cravings. So if you've got those sugar cravings, you can use ice cream as a treat to be able to stabilize it. And so it took us from initial start to where we are now, where we've got a French chef, just working, refining our formula. We've got some really cool things on this. It's probably taken 5 years of obsession to get this out there, but I'm convinced that we're all convinced that there's another way that we can bring to the market an ice cream where there's no compromise. And most people, like, now there's a wake up call. People don't want to compromise.
They
So
don't.
yeah.
Why should we? What's the point in living if we have to be miserable our whole lives? I just saw the documentary about Brian Johnson, where it's so ridiculous and it's so obscene, and that it's taken to such a level that that's not life. What you're talking about is, why should we not just stay away from poisons and get replacements that are really good for you and satisfy what our body actually craves for and gives us something that we actually really enjoy? It's actually a revolution in food, which is why it was so perfect having you on today and going through like these 4 areas, because the only way you come up with something like that is if you really, really, really care about the consumer and what the consumer actually gets from this. That's how, and then that will layer out your entire value chain of how you do, of how everything you do after that. And so I love, love what you put together and what you built. And the branding is there. You then took the product and got it to market. Talk to us a little bit about that, and then we have a few questions which are in here, but I want to talk about, and I want to work with you on the future growth and how we growth hack our way to building this up to be one of the most important. First of all, this is not an ice cream brand. This is a longevity brand. But this is the first sector that we're going to hit, which is going to be in the ice cream area. And then we'll layer on more and more and more that will come after that. But kick us off with the first piece first.
So about the go-to-market piece.
Mhm.
So we had an incredibly instructive first go of it, and the tough times are as informative and as good as the good times, right? So it took us, first of all, in order to produce this formula, we had it batch. We had a batch form. Okay, let me just go back. In Hong Kong, I worked with a chef who was a big consumer of Protelicious, and he's a really big pastry chef. So he said, I think we can do this. So we did it together. We did a first prototype. And then at some of the events that we had with some of the big banks with Compass, I forget which one, but we had to hide some of the my ice cream because they were going too quickly and we weren't able to have any for the director. So I thought, oh, we got legs on this one. So then COVID arrived and it put a bullet through everything. We didn't lose our business. Our customers stayed with us. They lost 90% of the business. So everybody's business shrunk, but they really stuck through. Anyway, so we decided that we were going to really look at launching this ice cream in North America. So my husband really dug in this one, and we worked with an architect to create a first version of the ice cream, which was gorgeous in blind taste test. It blew all of the others out of the market on taste, and that's the only thing we wanted. I wanted it to have its merits on taste alone, and then everything else fell to the bottom line. All the benefits fell to the bottom line because we're creatures of habit, right? We're not going to have an ice cream because it's good for you. You have it because you really want something that's tasty. So we then came the tricky piece to go from batch to scalable. So if it took us 9 or 10 probably nail-biting months to get a scalable recipe, which was hugely tricky because nobody's done this. We're way out in left field. We are 50% higher in protein, if it's not more than that, than the closest competitor on the market, plus 0 added sugar, right? So we have, and all of the everything that we have in there, we're calibrating to make sure that it brings benefits. But we also have a chart. It needs to be really rock the taste buds. So it took us 9 or 10 months to get out. We did a very first initial test in retail in Metro New York. And the tricky thing about high protein ice cream is the longer melting point. So the first version that we had out had a quite long melting point, which is inherent when you have a protein ice cream. So when you get it to the right temperature, it's absolutely God's creation, but when it's absolutely divine, but when it takes a while to get there. So that was one thing that we discovered that we needed to organize.
Okay. I want to just break them down one by one because we're going to overwhelm everybody with like the magnitude of the things that you've done. Okay. So go to market, first of all, you launched it, you had COVID, and that brought up another very important thing, which I just like to underline as we go through this stuff. With founders, it's not just about like the building out the incredible product and the incredible brand on top of the product. It's also not even just about the go-to-market. It's about having the resilience to be able to make it through all of the way. I call it peak performance, and I think of it no different to a star tennis player or a star footballer or anybody else. You need to have 3 really core components when you're peak performance in founders. You need to have clear decision making. You need to have clear communication, and you need to have an incredible mindset. Mindset is set by what you eat, what you drink, how you sleep, how you prepare, what your day looks like, how in charge of things you are, rather than stuff being in charge of you. The next thing is then making sure that your communication is exceptional and being able to explain how you're doing. And the next thing is the clear decision making. And what Sheila is showing here is no matter which adversity came along, her clear decision making was so strong that they made the decisions that would allow them to do the most important thing in an early stage company, which is survive. Before thriving, we have to survive, and we have to make sure that the cash flow is in place and everything is right. So now that fast forward to you to today, Sheila, you're in this place now. You've got the brand. The ice cream is beautiful. You have worked so hard to get the formula to where it is right now. And we're speaking about a very exciting campaign that we're looking to do. And actually, there was a very nice comment in here, which I'm going to throw in there from Shreya, which is it good to go B2C directly by leveraging content, offline, online marketplace? Offline, online marketplace is still first-hand move for the food industry to kickstart. I want to talk about WeFunder, but you may want to answer that question a little bit as well, just before we kick into WeFunder, because I think what you're doing to build emotional resonance, build trust, and build user empathy for why you're doing what you're doing is so perfectly positioned for Kickstarter. For WeFunder, that it's beyond description. But do you want to just speak to what Shreya's just said there?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for the question. So, D2C, I mean, D2C, we have a lot of interest from D2C, but my responsibility is to get the ice cream to people in a very safe way. And that means a big investment on the delivery costs. So it becomes a really good second option where you've already tasted it, you love it, and then you just put in a little subscription in place and you have maybe 4 or 6 pints a month, and then you're good. But for the first one, it's really best to try it in retail or another place, because nobody would believe how ridiculously expensive it is to get the ice cream across the country in a very safe way. And I can find cheaper options, but the food safety is really important. So the best, quality, the ratio between the investment and the quality we found means that your delivery costs are probably like $50, but you can make that work in a subscription.
Which makes Kushi's point even all the more important, right? Which is ice cream business requires really large cooling storage costs.
Yes.
How do you manage that, and how are you planning to scale? I have a thought that I'm going to throw in here, and I know you're going to come in on top. So first of all, I am pushing very hard for this to be a WeFunder campaign whereby it is crowdfunded, whereby Sheila comes out with the message of not having to compromise anymore. And I could say young girls, but it's young girls, young boys, young everybody. Like, why should we have to compromise between having delicious things and being really unhealthy and having, a body, just a terrible body image that we're not happy with and makes us miserable, right? Why should we have to choose? So I love that. And I think people on WeFunder will really love that as well. I'm also a huge fan of Liquid Death and how Liquid Death expanded out their brand, how they started with their beachhead, which in their case was startup. And then they moved it into the boardrooms of people who were just bored and created a really good brand message behind that. And then partnerships were the glory of the world. And the retail followed, because we all know you don't make any money from retail. Nobody makes any money from putting ice cream in Whole Foods or putting it into the other places as well. It's a break even at best, and it's free advertising. And then the biggest question becomes, how do you do what then Liquid Death did, which in their case was get investment and partnership with Live Nation, and suddenly every single concert that they did had Liquid Death right there on the front of it, which meant it was just forget every retail store in the world. Like, they're going to be in pet gas stations because they're going to be there. The partnerships made them gold. That's what turned them into $1 billion company. So the question is not like, do we do WeFunder? I think it's an easy first step, and I think people will lean in. The question is also, do we do retail? Retail is like, it's okay. We do okay, but we're never going to get rich from retail. The thing is, do we scale like crazy through partnerships, like maybe the football stadiums who have suddenly realized that they've been poisoning our kids every time we've gone there, and they've been giving them their churros. And by the way, I want you to take it, this is not an anti-churro live stream, okay? We like our churros, but there should be healthy options that are being given to our kids. And this could be an incredible time to come in with that healthy option. Sheila, talk to us.
So we're lucky. I mean, we've attracted some really interesting partnerships. One of the first ones we're really blessed with is the great team at the Equinox Hotel in New York City. So this was really a trust trial, but we have the same message, right? It's longevity and no compromise, right? So they've been absolutely great, and they've sort of expanded it with a product line. But partnerships are very interesting, and in fact, there's one that's just coming up right now, Brian. I can't mention it at this point, but it could blow things. I can send you a little email afterwards, but it could blow things up.
Don't tell me. Look, I like the intrigue of you not telling us much more than giving
Okay.
us a name. It's like a good suspense movie.
Okay. 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 No, but this one had me really scrambling. No, I shouldn't scrambling, but really intrigued and doing the research all weekend. So partnerships, indeed, they give you. You got to pick them well, or they have to pick you well. You know, you've got to put out in the universe, and it comes back to you. You got to pick them well to make sure that your values aligned and intention aligned. And obviously the rest of the metrics need to come along with it. But partnerships, I do believe in particularly in the B2B space, are where you can leverage for mutual benefit. Mutual.
Yeah, and I just want to go back to Shreya made that really good point about, we'll come back to the nuts in a second, but made that really good point earlier on about like leveraging content or offline. The thing about like brand or convincing people or consumer engagement is that we all buy with our emotions. Like literally, I'll never buy another Apple product again in my whole life, and probably dedicate a lot of it to using them as my example of like how great companies die, right? And so that's because we're all emotional, all of us, some more than others, but we're all emotional. We make decisions based on emotion. Like if we have young kids and we hear from a friend who tells us that like there's this incredible immersive entertainment thing where Shrek comes out of the wall and shakes hand with, like our emotions will tell us that we want to go. What will then happen is our logic will then question that decision, right? So the emotion says, oh my God, my little boy, he's going to love Shrek. Shrek's going to be like, oh, and my boy's going to be like, oh, and like, that's why I do all these silly things, because I just want to see that little, ooh. But then my logic is like, oh, how much are the tickets? $20? Cool. That does not override my emotions. $200? Maybe we could just watch Shrek on TV, right? And so the logic will always go with the emotions. The beautiful thing with a product like what you have is it is highly emotional. And men and women have a different bar as far as just internally and externally and influences and everything else. Like you'll see young girls where every single thing that they're seeing on Instagram is you have to be skinny, you have to be skinny, you have to be skinny, to such an unhealthy level that they do terrible things. To boys to a certain extent, but it's different things. You have to be tough, you have to be strong, you have to, it's equally idiotic. But in the world of like really good foods that are delicious, this message is so important, because there are so many people who have got bulimia, anorexia. There are so many people who have got diabetes because they've eaten high sugary food that have been sent in for things. Like the stories that you have are immense. And the amount of parents that have either had challenges with their children directly relation to these stories, or challenges with themselves, are equally immense. It's literally like running up the other end of a field in English soccer and having nobody on the other side. There's nobody on the other side, right? It's not just no compromise. Like no compromise doesn't even get close to the pain and misery that is inflicted on people by how the entire human race judge us, and at the same time by how food companies destroy and poison us. So I see what Shreya said there as a huge thing. If we're talking about like where would I spend all of my money as you, it's all on content marketing. Everything is on content marketing outreach, everything. It's all on highly emotional content talking about no more. It's not okay. It's not okay for our kids to be brought up like this in this world. When things were analog, that was hard because they just had to go to school. But then they got to come home and it was okay. But things are not analog now, they're digital. It is 24-hour misery. And so the message that you have is a really strong message. And I share this with, investors who are wondering, how do I find a company that can scale very quickly? This is the kind of company that can scale very quickly because the emotions are very high. And also founders who are thinking, when is the right time for a lot of emotional content? In a case like this, it's like right now. It is 70% of budget is on highly emotional content, very strategically directed to the people who will care, who are the partners that would be able to push you to 100,000 people. Why shouldn't the Dodger Stadium have you as their main ice cream in the stadium. Like, how dare they put something in there with 2,000 calories and more sugar than you can fit into 5? Anyway, I'm
Yeah.
done. But like, I'm gonna let Sheila talk.
Actually, I've been taking notes. I'm always taking notes when we're speaking, Brian, which is
I
great.
just enjoy what you do so much. There's like so much content that I'm like, oh, hang on, I'm interviewing Sheila. It's not me.
No, I
But I
appreciate it.
love it. And you have everything in front of you. So just talk to us a little bit about what you think about that, what you think about the partnerships, about the content, and just, fact check me. If I'm off on this, like stop me and tell me, no, actually it's slightly different, or reinforce if you feel it's right.
So no, I would let's go to the content for a second. Let's go to the content. In terms of just to finish off with the partnerships, completely agree. And if you have like one or two really strong partnerships, that can really carry you forward. So as I said, I need to keep this one off the table, but there's one that we're working on right now, which is absolutely extraordinary. But let's look at content for a second. And the part of the trick for us has been also the education. That I think the emotion is one thing, but also the education, because so many people don't know that protein is us, right? We are big piles of protein, and protein drives all the different systems in the body. And women are the worst offenders, because we're often looking, protein is going to be, is going to bulk me up. No, you get the right one, and it's adding to lean muscle mass. And a lot of the messaging that you were saying earlier on, Brian, in terms of that people are being sort of dictated how they need to look, and then they choose their food accordingly. But you can go down a very deep and bad rabbit hole and pay for that for ages. So part of also the emotion, but also the content, we are heavily science backed. We are heavily science backed, and we probably spent too long in that rabbit hole, like it just really, as nerds in the science, because we find it very interesting, but B, it's the story of self. And things like, for instance, many people don't know that when you have a whole list of amino acids in any given protein, that some of them are very heat sensitive. The ones which tend to antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, immune building, detoxifying, they're either sensitive to heat, so what the stuff that you cook, you lose those, or they're sensitive to the Maillard reaction, which is when you're cooking the caramelization, right? So I would say emotion, with a bedrock for us of did you know? Education is part of it, because when you understand better, then you choose better, and
I
then you
love
live.
that. And I want to, just in the last few minutes of this, like we've covered the genesis of why you've built this and why you tick those 4 boxes so beautifully and why everybody else out there should. We've touched the go-to market and the resilience and how you've managed to take like one of the most improbable and unpredictable times of human history, where like 4 years, 3 years, the entire country was locked down, and how you've managed to build a peak performance to be able to continue doing the necessary things during that period, preparing yourself for a monster growth immediately afterwards. How you're preparing yourself for a GTM now using WeFunder to combine finding customers with
Yeah.
also finding investors as well. And then how you're then going to layer on with like a monster content marketing campaign aligned with a really important partnership campaign as well. Share with everybody, you have like 2-3 minutes, share with everybody your future vision of what Protelicious is. And then also, like, where are you in 5 to 10 years' time? And then share with everybody just your email address, please, and how people can check out the product.
Okay. So the future vision of Protelicious, I want to be. Protelicious is for the people who care about their food and about their health. It's not for everybody, but if you really care about if you enjoy your food and you really care about your health today and tomorrow, and that's Protelicious is for that person. So there has to be a consciousness, right? And that's not everybody, and that's okay. But what Protelicious we want is to be part of, it's a crave worthy either ingredient or foods that you can enjoy on a daily basis, so you don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about anymore. Did I do this? Did I get this? Did I get your macros are all covered in the best possible way. And then your micros can layer on top of that. And it takes the stress. It quiets everything down. You're better with yourself also, and you're better with others. So ultimately that's really the goal. How do we reach that?
Uh,
Where
uh,
people
yeah, I'm gonna just layer in what I believe, why I invested, and I'm gonna add in one other thing, and then and this will also touch your goal as well. And then please share your email address so people can contact you. I see Sheila as the Martha Stewart for longevity, period. That's it. She will build out a brand of multi products, which are all longevity, which are all delicious. I say Martha Stewart because she's my favorite entrepreneur of all time,
I'll take
period.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, she will
I
be the
agree.
Martha Stewart, and the line of products that Martha Stewart has will be the line of products that Sheila has. It will all be extremely brand focused, which are in one particular area, which is the area of longevity and delicious. Both will meet each other in the middle. That's what's being built in here. So investors out there, if you're interested in investor in the Martha Stewart of longevity, before the US government took her down, which is like a whole different story, but like the greatest brand that was built and then rebuilt afterwards, that is what Sheila is building right now. And also just Shamalia, I hate when this happens, right? Because you bring up such a good point right at the very end. But like they're not mutually exclusive, influencer marketing and brand marketing. The brand marketing is something you have to do. You have to have those four components to be able to build it. In Sheila case, it's a no-brainer. We're going to get some wonderful, 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 wholesome person who is perfect for this. And that person will be the face of the product, or a few people will be the face of the product. Influencer marketing has never been more powerful. We just got to make sure that it's the right type of influencer so that the conversions are in place. But a great point. And Sheila, last word with you. Actually, before last word, there was a comment earlier on, which was just about which came from Sumit, which is Foxnut. You have any thoughts on Foxnut? I don't.
Since it's
No. So actually, well, let's look at it very quickly differently. The difference between superfood and just really healthy food that's good for you, aren't they kind of the same thing? Just one
so
is
if
a little bit more super than the other.
a superfood are often associated with either different actions within the body, but curiously, and I've often thought about this one, macronutrients are not taken within this, but superfoods will have ashwagandha, for instance. It's mushroom, but it has lots of different impact on there. But the macros have not been. But what's interesting is this macro, when it's this quality, and that's what really our expertise is in, creating the ice cream and also sourcing. We have a deep expertise in that. It rocks every system in the body. It
Yeah,
is
incredible.
absolutely a superfood, but it just happens to be so delicious that you just, enjoy it on a daily basis, and sort of life unfolds better with it. We have testimonials from like all over the world.
I love it. I love it. Listen, you're the best in the world. How can people contact you by email?
So where do I put my
Oh, just say it. If you just
oh,
say it, it's okay.
so it's
And
Sheila,
actually, Kishley can probably
here we
put
go.
it in the chat.
Sheila.Partra at protelicious.com. So nobody can pronounce the name. It will always be protein, it'll always protect, and it'll always be delicious. Protelicious.com.
Okay, delicious. And by the way, if anybody wants to get in contact with Sheila, they can always contact me at Brian. You've got the email, which is just here on the screen, but just in case you're listening to this and you can't see it, you can go for Brian at expertdojo.com. Good on you, Kishley. Good call. Listen, you're building something incredible. Let's build it big, build it strong. Investors who'd like to connect, we've already invested. So not talking from a promoter's perspective, from somebody who's actually putting money into the company. So congratulations, Sheila. You're building an incredible thing. Congratulations to you and the team. And we're going to build this thing big.
Thank you so much, Brian, for your support for the team. We're so proud and delighted to be part of this and grow